Hello and a warm welcome to today's discussion, Women Shaping Cybersecurity's Future Trends and Predictions. I am Shilpa Sharma, your host, and I am thrilled to have you join us, especially as we are celebrating Women in Cyber Talks month. Before we get started, we would like to go over a few house rules. For our attendees, the session will be in listen-only mode and will last for an hour, out of which the last 15 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. Also, admissions are currently open. For further details about our courses, please visit our website www.eccu.edu. Our speaker for today's session, Heather Noggle. Heather has built up 30-year career spanning HR, software development, data integration, cybersecurity, project management, business ownership, speaking, and writing. She is passionate about small business cybersecurity. She combines her expertise with engaging storytelling, often using analogies and AI-generated images of black cats in cybersecurity themed scenarios on social media to raise awareness within the small business community. Heather serves as vice chair of the Springfield Tech Council and volunteers with Redeemer Lutheran Church and the Missouri Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. Without any further delay, I would hand over the session to you, Heather.
Hello to everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. And I would like to talk to you today about cybersecurity, and where we are, where we're going, and what we need to know. So I am Heather Noggle. Shilpa introduced me. I do have 25 of my 30 years in technology and growing in technology of my 30 some odd year career, and the human resources portion of that did come earlier. So I think I'm at 28 years in technology, but we'll stick with the 25 plus. I am a certified secure software lifecycle professional. I'm waiting for that credential to come through. I took the test 2 weeks ago. And I do have that HR and then a government and county government perspective of how to look at business and organizations. So on the county level, we're looking at the city size plus the surrounding area, and that was in the St. Louis metropolitan area here in Missouri. And then years ago, I got a communications degree because that is a business way of working with people. And that has been very instrumental in my career, especially in the speaking and the writing. So I want to talk with you about cybersecurity as a business and risk concern throughout this presentation today. And that concept may not be new. The threat examples change on a daily and sometimes weekly and basis in how we look at what's out there, what's attacking us, who are those people, what have they managed to breach, and what is as a threat right now. So what we're protecting, though, doesn't necessarily change. Our cyber resilience then starts with recognizing that what we're protecting is what matters, and then security is in reference to that. So risk is really the emphasis that we've got, and securing our risks is where we are focused, and the presentation will talk through that. So organizations then need to know what they have, what are their assets, what are they protecting, what are the crown jewels in the organization, and they need to have that all documented. And we need to know when those things change as well. So change management is a key component to business risk management and resilience. And then a reminder, just as we dive in here to some of the details, everything, absolutely everything is connected, everything. Case in point. We are all completely connected. There's my home connection. I work from home most of the time, and so I'm using that connection. And even though that's split to where my kids can't get on the business part of the connection, it's still a connection. If you have a modern refrigerator, it might be connected to the internet. Mine are older, they are not. But other pieces of technology in my home are internet connected unless I turn them off by default. Same thing within businesses and all the Internet of Things devices. Taylor Swift's tour bus might be connected to my home connection if we're both connected to the internet at the same time. And whoever Janice is, her dentist is online using online dental software. And you get the idea, very small businesses and homes, very large businesses and Internet of Things devices, they're all connected to the internet, and whoever owns or administers the devices is responsible for securing them. So there's this focus then on responsibility that we can take from this very individual level and look at it in terms of business and operations. So what's new is where I think we need to start. And by new, I'll take a look at what's trending in the last year to 2 years. We know that artificial intelligence, AI, and large language models are booming. They came about couple years ago. We started looking at ChatGPT. There was Google's Bard, now Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot is in everything, and they're absolutely everywhere, to the point where if we're technologists and we're talking with people who are not technical, when you say AI, they are thinking large language models. We also know that quantum computing is coming. It could be here within the year, it could be here within 15 years, and we don't really know. But we do know that the immediate first order effect of quantum computing when it does arrive is that it will impact cryptography and our current algorithms. So a little more on that later. I've got a slide to go through that. As we look at these trends with AI and quantum computing, we know that there's going to need to be a shift in how we do business if we are to protect what is important to us and the things we've identified as risks to our business and things that we've identified as intellectual property that we're protecting, and therefore the risks are there. We also know that data breach and privacy laws are shifting internationally and also at the individual, at least in the US, the state level, these are changing. And they are things that organizations need to keep abreast of so that they can operate within compliance. Back to AI. There is a growing role of the need of governing AI within organizations. We take a look at very small businesses, and they often have no idea how they're going to use AI, who's using AI, and what it means. And then we zoom out to larger businesses, and sometimes those businesses are using AI even though they've said they aren't. And you go into a room of people when I'm giving a talk, if I give this question of, are you using AI, whether that's a talk or just with an individual organization, and ask them, some people will nod their heads, yes, they're using AI, and people who are running the organization might think that they're not. So there's that shadow AI, that fourth point on here. What we know about AI, especially from the large language model LLM perspective, is that there's bias within the data because the data is prepared by human beings. And so there are guardrails that need to be put in place, and these need to happen at the governance level within the organization as well. So what are the guardrails that you will put in place within your organization of how to use AI? They're also the guardrails with the LLMs. So we also have to test the output from AI. And this is not a talk on that, but it's something that organizations need to make apparent for their AI use. And then that governance and the definite risk with AI if there's not the governance, and then any sort of compliance as that comes about. So who's doing that work in your organization with AI policies and how safe use and how we are looking to move forward with an AI, whether we have shadow AI, how we're going to address that. So that's definitely something trending. And I've been doing some work in this space this year, doing some book editing. It's fascinating. And here's that quantum computing slide that I promised. Over to the right there is my fake cat Cubiticus that has his own story. And if you're interested, you can certainly reach out to me. I even made a song for him. But the idea here is that quantum computing, when it arrives, it's unknown, could really change a lot of things with the traditional cryptography algorithms that are in use today. And the idea there in 2024, August of 2024, the National Institute of Standards and Technology here in the United States came out with a list of what were considered 4 quantum safe algorithms, 3 of which were ready to go at that time, and the 4th that should arrive here at some point in 2025. So that's when the algorithms arrive, but we truly don't know when we need to be ready to go with quantum cryptography and protection against what will break these algorithms that are in place today. So the language we need to keep in mind here has to do with quantum agility, or algorithmic agility, I should say, so that we are able to make a very quick change into a different algorithm without needing to recompile our computer programs. And so that's something that organizations that have software need to understand they're going to need to be doing. And so before we can take a look at what quantum computing can achieve for us, we do need to determine how we're going to prepare for the potential of our cryptography breaking. It is all woven together, but that's something to keep in mind here in 2025 and beyond. We also need new security professionals and additional skills for current security professionals. Current security jobs, potentially the early ones that are at the SOC level, so security analysts who are watching alerts and responding to them, I think those will be the trades of the future, and that we should, within our education systems, look at what that's going to mean to us. AI specific jobs are, right now they're called prompt engineers, but there will be AI specific jobs, and some of those are new jobs are in the data science area. We're going to need the security and governance I've been talking about. These new jobs, though, as we're looking at them, are probably not entry-level jobs, creating its own problem. So existing work, therefore, we already know that within the cybersecurity space, existing work is not often entry level either. The people who are entering into the cybersecurity field from adjacent fields such as software and IT and networking tend to have the overlap in many of the same skills, or they have a long career in the human part of cybersecurity and HR. So the people coming in to these roles as we're trying to fill them are not entry level either. And there are many people very interested in cybersecurity who are having trouble breaking in because they have to compete with people who have skills that are complementary. So what does that mean? We have to expand our cybersecurity training to look at what's coming and also provide some work experience and some additional skills to people who are looking to break into the field. And we see the trends with this already. Here in the United States, we have two-year community colleges, some of which offer programs that are really detailed in the technical aspect, very practical programs, so that we can have new practitioners who are ready to go from a technical perspective, even if they're not ready to plug completely into security operations. They're ready to go within 2 years, and with some additional training to give them a rounder perspective of business and operations within a technical portion of an organization, they can be ready for those trades of the future. The 4-year degree programs in the universities are more traditional. They change almost every semester just in response to how everything within cybersecurity is changing and the threats we're defending against. Boot camps are still trying to find their hold into the services that they provide. They are popping up all over the place, sometimes in conjunction with these community college programs. And there's even one I've seen outside of cybersecurity training new quality assurance professionals. And so I think when we get the boot camp formula just right, that those will be helpful. The internship programs can help with that work experience in addition to a very practical 2-year program such as community college. And then reskilling mid-career technical professionals, and also programs appealing to women and minorities who are people, at least in the United States, who traditionally are not going into technical careers. We have a 25% rate for women in technical careers, and that's fairly low, where we also know, and I will present, that we need more of the thought processes that a lot of women bring. So the way ahead, not so different. For organizations, leadership must value cybersecurity or security, and that does mean the risk management, not IT, not pure IT, the governance, risk, and compliance placed here, and then including security at the organizational level and how we do business, because that impacts culture. If we look at the mission of the organization, which is what it does, the vision of the organization, how it does it now in the future, and the values of the organization, which is why we're doing what we do, security needs to be put in there intentionally, so that when we're making examples to convince people why they might need to change something, we can refer back to mission, vision, and values. Human resources or personnel has a role within security as well, even if it is simply keeping abreast of the types of jobs we need to be hiring for and making sure that our salary ranges and our job duties on those roles are relevant and current. And then obviously culture controls and explaining controls, as I talked about just a moment ago. Change management, strangely enough, I believe is very essential in this process for an organization. If there's an organization that has no change management formalized, then it probably doesn't have policies. It has spotty documentation on procedures, and it doesn't know what it's doing today, why it's doing it, etc. So putting change management in place can make some of these other upgrades or changes in how an organization operates much easier. And the way to do that, like anything, if you're building a cybersecurity program, it's the same thing. Export compliance program, I have some background in that. You start where you are and you document where you are. And then you can make some notes along the way of how well you're operating today and where your pain points are. And you start to build that program if it's missing. Change management, just a quick overview of that. Someone then will request a change, and then formally or informally, depending on where you are in the process, then that would be reviewed. Do we need this change? And if it's determined that you do need the change, someone with authority needs to approve that change, and then the work to make the change happen takes place. If it's software, then there is an official release to it and documentation about it, so that historically 6 months from now, someone can look back and say, here's my current state, here's the last time it changed, and here's why. So that program piece and the technology around it and securing that need to evolve. And that means your organization, if you're missing any of these things, will need to evolve as well, because having them in place makes building a security program exceptionally more attainable. So because AI is so big right now, I wanted to highlight a few of the questions that have to do with the risks. And one of those is, how is AI used in your organization today? I was sitting with a company yesterday, and we asked that, and we did get that. There were 5 of us there representing who I was working with. And the organization gave 2 different answers. No, we don't have AI. Oh, yes, we do have AI. This person is using it, that person is using it. So then naturally, it's fairly clear that there aren't AI policies in place. And so that next question is, do you have AI policies? And if the organization says yes, you can ask how extensive they are. What do they cover? Do you have AI training? How to use it, what not to do, to ensure security aspects of it, that we're not leaking data into the LLM, for example, if we're using a public model. And those questions, those first 3 are really good opening questions that will shape the rest of the conversation about AI. We certainly know that cyber criminals are using artificial intelligence to enhance what they do. And phishing then becomes much more convincing, because what we used to tell people was, well, look for spelling mistakes, look for usage of the language that is non-standard. Phishing now is way more convincing. And then we have deep fakes. About a year ago, I was at an event in town called Think Summit, and the attendance on this was about 300 people, I think. And there was a woman who was introducing all the speakers, and she would come on stage. And so by the point of midday, everyone knew who she was and knew her name. And the speaker for the lunch session, and we all settled in to eat, the speaker for the lunch session was one of the sponsors of the whole event. And he made a deep fake of the woman who was running the program. And he put that on screen to illustrate how convincing this is. It was her voice, it was her face. She spoke for about 90 seconds about various things having to do with the conference. And so that too was very convincing. And then at the end of the 90 seconds, he took the video of her speaking and compressed it down so that you got just a little bit of a waveform that you see with audio, and a blank black screen other than that. And on the waveform of the audio, using this woman's voice, it said, "Hi, honey, I can't pick you up from school today. I'm going to send a white Ford Explorer to pick you up from school, and I will see you at home. I love you very much. Have a great rest of your day." And then the audio blipped down to a black screen again. And everyone in the audience understood what that meant. If you can fake mom voice to kids, what else can you fake? So that's a year ago. The technology is better now. We know about the $25 million that an Asian corporation sent out because some checks and balances weren't in place where somebody could have said, no, this is a scam. So back to AI specifically in your organization, do you verify the output and the thought process? It doesn't actually think, but how do you verify how AI got its answer? That within your organization needs to be something that you determine you're going to do. You also need to know your cyber criminals just from a conversational level. I mentioned last slide that they're bolder and better trained, and I'm not talking about the people who are just learning to hack and might do some things that they shouldn't do, or intentionally or otherwise, but they don't really know what they're doing. We call them script kiddies. I'm also not really talking about the hacktivists, the people who are looking to make some change and might be defacing websites. I am talking about actually trained businesses of cyber criminals, and they are more effective because artificial intelligence is in play for them. Typically, the bad guys do adopt the technology faster than the rest of us. So they're bolder, they're better trained, and we are the masses, they are the criminals. So within your business and your nonprofits or other organizations, your universities, cyber resilience is the key. What you're protecting does not change nearly as often as the attack vectors that are coming against us. And even though many of the attacks to regular people are invisible, they are certainly not imaginary. So in part of your planning on how you're going to work with these novel attacks, do look inward and take an inventory of your risks again as often as you can. What are we protecting? How is it working? And that's what the cyber resilience is, so that you're not just reacting, you're proactively then planning for security failures. And you can take a look at that change management process you have in place, and you can see what changes have been effective in moving you forward. You can see the current state of how your organization does business, and you know your cyber criminals. If there are 3 simple policies that you can focus on that have to do with resilience in the event of a breach, these 3 are exceptionally important. So you have your incident response plan, your business continuity plan, and your disaster recovery plan. So these policies and the playbooks around them are very important to your organization. There is an old saying I don't especially like, but I hear frequently, and I'm starting to believe as technology shifts, it's not a matter of when you are attacked or breached, but if it's now a matter of when. And so however you plan for that will determine the outcome. So I should restate that to be clear. It's not a matter of when, I'm sorry, it's not a matter of if you are breached, but a matter of when. And I do hope that that's wrong, but we have to plan that something's going to happen to us. I will give you my own story. I was driving back from an in-person conference last week, and out of absolutely nowhere and from the sky, part of a tire from an 18-wheel truck, we have many of those in the US, came and hit my car. And the way I had planned for that was years of driving that something might happen. I didn't plan for that very specific event to happen, but I was able to respond to it because when we learn to drive, especially in the US on the highways, we know we're going very fast and something may happen. And the calmer we can remain and we can be prepared for the unexpected to happen, the better the outcome's going to be. So that's the idea behind the incident response. And I'm fine that the vehicle suffered some damage. You have to keep that incident response plan current. So your staff members may change. You're going to want to ensure that if you've got your incident commander listed, that when that person leaves, that person is changed on your incident response plan. All 3 of these policies and plans need to be available offline in case all of your online communications are not accessible. And please remember to build a communications plan within that incident response plan. Who's going to be the point of contact of your organization? What can that person say, and what has your legal team determined that person cannot say? And then tabletop exercises. I can't say enough good things about tabletop exercises and what they can do in helping you determine what should be a part of your incident response plan. And then your business continuity plan is where you will focus on the things that you absolutely have to have in order for your business to continue operating. And then disaster recovery will help you to return back to your typical and normal operations. Remember to test that incident response in tabletops. So inside your organization, going back there again, your human resources can help you with training, not necessarily conducting the training, because sometimes security training does require security professionals, but they can certainly help you track who has taken that training, who needs that training, and who has requested additional training. They can help you with mentorship, and then one of my favorite things, intergenerational teams. This works really well toward business resilience and also change management and making sure we have everything we need to know documented. I recently spoke with an organization who had a person retire and took that person's knowledge alongside leaving the organization. The knowledge went with the person, and that's definitely not something we want. We want also to incorporate security in culture, and that's going to take some work because culture tends to form itself. But again, if we go back to the mission, the vision, and the values that you are saying within your organization are important, if you put security and protecting those things in there in your communications internally, that can help. We've got to emphasize GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, to build and maintain any sorts of security programs that we have. And then going back to that multi-generational workforce, we are seeing more diversity in thought if we're aligned with mission, vision, and values, as I mentioned, and we can then determine very solid approaches to security and risk management if we all speak the same language and we're all working toward the same goals, and we bring that benefit of everyone thinking about it a little bit differently. That can be very impactful. Very young people, people who've seen the evolution of the organization, and people from different backgrounds can do some amazing things when they're working together. Cybersecurity. Security is good business. A solid program here in the United States, at least, can help you cut insurance premium costs if you can prove that you've put security into practice. And then risk-based strategic cybersecurity planning does improve your business resilience because you're working through the things that matter to you. And from that perspective, instead of from the perspective of whatever is in the news this week, because there will always be something in the new that's in the news this week. There's a new large language model, for example. There's a new chip that's coming out from this company that will advance AI. You can also look to prepare for those workforce needs that you have today and in the future, both within your organization and within your community. You can seek the right talent by keeping those job descriptions that you have in your organization and your pay scales current. Tech jobs need more frequent review within human resources than jobs that don't change that frequently. You can add experts or consultants as needed from adjacent domains to work with your security team and with your leadership to determine next steps where you're feeling stuck. And my challenges for you are: advocate for security within your organization as a strategic business partner. And that can be if you're brand new and coming in with experience from other organizations. That can be if you're brand new in your career completely, your fresh perspective working with someone who is more senior. If you work with a perspective of security is important, what's important to us and how we protect it, you are bringing value to an organization. Depending on where you are in your career, you can find or you can become a mentor within your organization. And that's not just restricted to security. You can work alongside others and talk through the things that matter in technology, especially, and what they're going to mean both now and in the future that maybe some other people can't see. You can recognize and teach that security is business risk management. You can then work to adopt and foster this continuous improvement mindset that change management brings. So I'll review those again. Change management, someone formally requests a change, and your organization will have to determine how big that change needs to be for a formal request. And then as a group, a team will review that change. Do we have to do this? Do we need a formal change advisory board, or is it something that isn't quite that concrete? And then the people who will determine whether that change needs to go forward will then accept or reject that change. Work will then commence if it's accepted to make the change, and then we have to document and implement the change. I think that in the year 2025 and beyond, as we look at all of technology and business processes and operations, the solid change management that has been put into a policy and a here's how we do it procedure will make massive impacts for businesses and how they work with technology and security. And that boils down to in daily operations, how we show up and do the work is how we manage changes and how we document what has come before, what has worked, what hasn't. Then the work is to find the gaps. So we look at what's missing. We have to advocate for its inclusion because it could become very important as soon as tomorrow or today. Anything that we find that's missing that impacts the organization needs to be included in the documentation. And that then requires us to look at everything from a very top-down perspective of finding what is missing. And sometimes you need experts to help you find and fill gaps in certain areas, whether they're very specific or require certain expertise, or whether they're just something that is too close to us because we're working in the day-to-day of the operations. Where possible, especially for security, find and use frameworks that matter to what you're trying to protect. Work with the simplest framework that you can. Incorporate frameworks if you need them for governance, risk, and especially compliance. Sometimes you are forced to use certain frameworks, but those will help you along your way in achieving this business resilience that security is necessary to be incorporated and working within. So with that, I want to conclude this portion of the presentation and turn this back over to Shilpa, and we can talk further about all these things that we've discussed today. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather, for delivering such an informative session, and our attendees share the same sentiments. If you're interested to learn more about our program, do let us know in the poll that's going to be conducted now. If you would like to learn more, please select yes, and we will schedule a call to provide you with more information. An important note, admissions are presently open. For comprehensive details regarding our courses, kindly visit our official website. So, Heather, shall we start with the Q&A?
That sounds good.
Great. So, our first question to you is, what are the best ways to manage information from different sources and cloud storage management of data?
I think finding a standard way within your organization, the cloud makes it interesting because a lot of organizations are hybrid. They have on-prem pieces of information and they also have the things that are in the cloud. And so something that would mimic a SIM, so security information event management, though obviously for information, that's different than looking for alerts and cyber attacks. But the idea is still the same, is if we have to make some sort of action on it or manage it, we do need to centralize where we store it and understand, harmonize it. What does it mean? If it's coming from different locations with different language, but it's impactful for our business, then someone needs to be in charge of making sure that we understand it in the same way, communicating it, the information, and a group of people might need to determine, is this the same thing? So however you need to bring everything that's relevant to your business together and store it in a central place and put together teams to filter through it and determine what's important, do that. I don't have a really good example of a piece of software because I don't know that it's a technical problem so much as it's an operational problem. If you've got a follow-up question to go along with that, please do ask it in case I didn't quite address everything you're looking for.
Thank you for answering that question, Heather. Our next question to you is, Will demand of cybersecurity increase even more with quantum computing, and will there be a need of bigger investment in cyber professionals?
Yes, I strongly believe that you are 100% correct if you're asserting that we need these things. Cybersecurity and the technical aspects of cybersecurity will always shift a little bit. The need for cybersecurity from an organizational perspective, it will always be there now that we are connected, and the only way to remove that is to remove the connection. I am old enough to remember checking library books out of a library using a card that's in the book and a date stamp, and there were no computers whatsoever. And so I've seen this entire evolution from that and into home computing and learning to program on my own, and then into when we finally became connected at the university level, and then the big business level, and then the home level. So the need for security increases as we add newer technologies, and quantum will be no different. And it will shape the way we think when it arrives, and no one knows when that's going to be. So there are some people having conversations about this already who are at the cutting edge of the research. I would recommend searching for some of them if this is an area of interest for you.
Thank you for answering that question, Heather. Our next question to you is, what skills do you think cybersecurity professionals will need most in the next 5 years?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I think the ability to explain technical things in non-technical language will be exceptionally important with all of this change that's coming about. We will need people who will be able to understand and translate and provide stories, and also convince people of the need to follow these things that we are stipulating in our policies that are necessary to keep us safe. We are often trading security and convenience. There's a continuum that says the most convenient thing is often the least secure. And so we will be asking people to do things that take them more time to help them be secure. And of course, our security industry is trying to make this a little less difficult, but in the meantime, we will be asking people to be more vigilant and to look at business from a security perspective. And so I think what we traditionally call the soft skills or the power skills are going to be as important as the technical skills that we are teaching in the universities and in the boot camps and in all of the online self-learning that we get to do. Someone needs to be teaching these additional skills so that we can communicate about what we're learning and where it applies.
Thank you for answering that question. Our next question to you is, what mistakes do you see in cybersecurity beginners or even mid-level professionals that they often make?
Mistakes can be just being human, so misconfigurations. So at a technical level, those are definitely the mistakes that we make. I think we also make a lot of other mistakes in how we communicate to the other levels in the organization. So going back to the previous question, there are a lot of things that we don't document. There are also a lot of things that we don't fully explain to people who need to understand the impact of whatever is going wrong or needs to be addressed or needs to have money spent on it. So we need more communication within the different levels in the organization so that the things that are definitely important to the organization and we understand, we need to be able to convey those in terms of business sense. And that's not skill or training that cybersecurity professionals and IT professionals natively get when they're learning how to work and configure and secure computers. So I see the next 5 years that those skills will be highly emphasized, and that we will see people who are comfortable doing that work rise more in their careers so that they can continue to do the technical work that they love, but they can also convey why it's necessary.
Thank you for answering that question. Our next question to you is, do you think businesses should start transitioning to quantum resistant encryption now or wait until quantum computing is more developed?
I would recommend that there's a plan in place for an organization that is of any size and with any technical capabilities and using encryption, that they start this year. And by this year, I mean as soon as possible. I've worked most of my career in software, and there's definite encryption there. I think that that's very important if there's data that needs to be encrypted at rest and in transit and all the states that data can be in, that it needs to remain encrypted, and that there is a risk that quantum computing could be upon us in enough of a state to break encryption within the next couple of years. So I do recommend at least starting conversations now.
Thank you for answering that question. Our next question to you is, what is your guidance for senior, like more than 25 years, women from the tech industry to move full-time to security versus the data domain? Uh, I am in currently this domain and having whoosh moment too. So she's asking as an experience.
So we're in a similar place. It was about 3 years ago that it hit me that in the 90s when I started, the big push, the big impetus, the big changes that were happening in technology were building software. Everybody needed software. There were not enough professionals to build software. And that's how I moved from HR into software. I had some tech skills from some of the work I'd done when I was a young person doing practical programming at home. And so I had the skills and I moved into software. And in the 90s, software was how you made a big difference in computing in business. And now it's security. And you can take all of your experience, your 25 plus years, and figure out where you want to work in security. And then you can find what you need to upskill so that you plug those gaps, much like we were doing with the organizations in the fictitious examples I gave, where they find what they're missing and then they go seek it and learn it. And I've spent about 3 years adding skills. It will never be done. We know that in this field, that with everything changing so rapidly, we're never going to be done adding skills. So I would recommend that you determine the area you want to work in security, and then you work to find the skills that you need to add. And I also recommend you talk about it along the way. LinkedIn has been fabulous for me to share what I've been learning, how I've been learning it, and why I've been learning it. And I've gained some perspective from other people of where to go next. So other professional networks certainly do the same thing. I recommend a mentor for you as well, because you have 25 plus years of a career, you have some knowledge that the cybersecurity world needs. And that'd be the other thing I want to leave with, is remind yourself of that daily.
Thank you for answering that question. Our next question to you is, how do organizations protect and manage their data if there is any form of security breach?
It goes back to the incident response plan, because if there's nothing in writing, then the moment where it matters most, how can they protect it? They're going to have differing opinions, and differing opinions when everyone's under pressure is not a good thing. So how do you do that? You have to decide within your organization what's worth protecting, and what do we absolutely have to protect? How do we protect it? And in the event something happens, what do we do? There are standard practices of isolating and trying to contain the incident as soon as you find it, but a lot of times finding the breach can happen weeks to months after it happens, and the incident response is different if we detect something happening than if we have ransomware. And so working through the scenarios, determining what the impact to your organization is, and putting that in your incident response plans, your business continuity plan, and your disaster recovery are going to be what makes the difference if you are hit with a breach.
Thank you for asking that question, answering that question. Our next question to you is, how is the future going with cyber threats and security? How many percent of women are pursuing career in cybersecurity?
So I work with a nonprofit, and we are providing training to people who have some cyber aptitude, and the work is to get them to a certain level of certification and also provide these soft skills and power skills we've been talking about, so that the work is in context. And for that program, we are running almost exactly the industry average, and we're new, so we don't have that many numbers, of about 25% in the women. I think there is great opportunity for women in the field to enter the field with their existing knowledge and understanding that the thing we need most is the thing that women do natively fairly well, which is to communicate, to explain, to be alongside, to ask the questions that we need to ask to fill in the gaps. I think that that is where our value is, if that is of interest to women, because I think also that sometimes the really very technical work can be not interesting to women. And so to see the field broaden, the security field, to be something that includes everyone, because we need the full skill set that everyone brings. I'm very excited about that, and that's where I've found my place, is the mix of my technical skills and my communication skills. So if you are someone who enjoys communicating and you've been thinking about coming into the cybersecurity field, please do give it consideration. We need to make it more of a business function and less of a technical function if we're going to succeed in the future.
Thank you, Heather, for answering that question. Our next question to you is, what advice will you give to women who are starting out in the industry, for example, graduates in cybersecurity?
Network. This is a very friendly field. I'm so impressed thus far. Just again, coming over from a software career and a business owner career, when I expressed interest in cybersecurity, there are a great many people who were just willing to get to know me and give me advice when I asked questions. And these are people who'd never heard of me and didn't have a reason to talk with me other than the fact that they wanted to advance the field and be kind. I didn't see that in software. I see that in security because it's such a common fight. So find people who will help you along the way and mentor you. That's one thing. The second thing is, please don't be discouraged by seeing there aren't that many other women in the field. You'll find what you need, and you'll find the friendly people amongst the men if you don't assume that you won't. I think that's the best thing to remember, is we need more women in the field, but we need more people in the field. And the more people we work to bring into cybersecurity, the more we emphasize these soft skills and power skills, I think we will attract more women to what is typically seen, especially when you put the word cyber in front of security, as a male-dominated field. So stay the course. If you enjoy the work that you're doing, there is definitely room for you in this field. We need more practitioners, and we need people who can explain what we're doing to people who need to understand that security is important.
Thank you so much for answering that question. Our next question to you is, how can we bridge the gap between the underrepresented cybersecurity space when it comes to equal employment and market rate payers?
I think time will help us with that. And as the field shifts, all of technology suffers from this. It's not just cybersecurity. And again, I think it's just been partially a lack of interest in what used to be a very technical field. I think that because it is becoming less technical and more people oriented, more operations oriented, more business risk oriented, we will start to see more women in the field. And I think that we also, as women, will benefit on the whole if we don't complain, we do our work, and we make sure that when we have good ideas that we express them. I think that's the biggest advice I can give to women who are in the field. If you know you have a good idea, please make sure you voice what you're saying, no matter how many times you have to say it. You have to voice what you're thinking if you know you have a good idea. And I think that that will help elevate the field. And again, this is a very friendly field. The professionals here are amazing. I'm so pleased and proud to be one of the representatives of the cybersecurity field and working as a cybersecurity advocate within organizations from the business perspective too. So there's a place for you here.
Thank you, Heather, for answering that question. Uh, we'll take last two questions for the day. So our next question to you is, how is AI transforming threat intelligence, and what skills are essential to stay relevant?
So if we're looking at threat intelligence, I think that there's a native curiosity there in AI. If you understand how to use it really well, if you've got good skill with it and know when to double check it, which is pretty much always, that you can look at AI as a robotic arm towards your existing threat intelligence skills. So in the beginning, while you're working through how to work with AI and making sure that you have your own processes in place. It may take a little bit longer to do what you would do traditionally with threat intel, but once you've got your way of working within a large language model, and I'm sticking there because that's where my experience is more than trying to look at any sort of machine learning that you might apply with threat intelligence, then I think you can really use that AI as that robotic arm and get more done in the work that you're already doing in the way you know how to do threat intelligence. So I tend to look at generative AI that way for everything, as a robotic arm when you're already an expert. And if you're not yet an expert, I would get to be an expert in threat intelligence and then figure out how to make AI as an amplifier for what you do.
Thank you for answering that question, Heather. Our last question to you is, how can someone enter in cybersecurity space, and what should be the stepping stone for a woman starting her career?
The first thing to do for everyone is, once you know you're interested in security, is to take an assessment of what you're good at and what you're interested in, because it's saying you're interested in cybersecurity is almost like saying you're interested in a medical career. And there are a whole lot of different roles in medicine. And so whenever I talk with someone who is fairly new, maybe still in school before university, and I want to do cybersecurity, there are a few questions you can ask yourself or someone you're speaking with of, well, what do you like to do? In a day, do you want to sit in the dark and write software, which is a very different skill set than if you spend the entire day interviewing people. And I've done both. And what I found coming through that is I enjoy a mix of half and half throughout the day, half where I'm working on things and half where I'm working with people. And so that's one of the early questions is, great, you want to help secure organizations and fight criminals and fight against attacks, but how do you want to do that? And then from there, if you determine it's a technical thing, are you more interested in defense? And you can ask people what kinds of video games they like to play. Do they like to defend against attackers, or do they want to be on the attack? And what we see is a lot of people want to be the attackers or the penetration testers, but they also have really good defense skills, and maybe that's where they start, since that's one of the early careers, is to be a SOC analyst or a cybersecurity analyst. And the work to get into the penetration testing does take a little bit longer. You could work, there's a big growth, I think, in governance, risk, and compliance as these things all change with emerging technologies. And so if the idea of applying your technical skills to business is for you, then a career in governance, risk, and compliance, it's not as perceived as interesting, but that can really elevate your career too. Get some level of technical skill and a whole lot of people skill and work within that. So I think that those are just determining the right questions that ask yourself can determine what training path you want to go on, and whether you want to go for a more practical experience like a boot camp or a 2-year degree here in the US, those community college degrees, or whether you want to get the full rounded education of a 4-year degree or even an advanced degree before starting into work. I don't have the answer for the early career part, because for me that was all software. I spent 22 years in the same place and have a little bit of a non-traditional career because we tend to move more often now. But I have seen and touched all sorts of different technologies, and they've all been relevant in how I apply what I'm talking about to securing business assets. So for me, that's the area I like to work in, is as consulting and talking with people to help them be more secure, and then the super small businesses and some of the convincing I have to do to help them understand that these threats are, again, they're invisible, but they're not imaginary.
Thank you so much, Heather, and thank you to our wonderful speaker and for answering those questions and for the great presentation and knowledge shared with our global audiences. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we are looking for more and more sessions with you. Before we conclude the webinar, Heather, would you like to give a small message to our audience?
Stay safe. Please, if you are interested in cybersecurity or you know someone who's interested in cybersecurity, do keep learning. Always keep learning. It's a field you will always need to learn in. And if you're interested in me, you can find me at heathernoggle.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have after that.
Thank you so much, Heather, for your message to our audience.